Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you again for coming. This is a very important discussion. You know, I'm a little confused. I was kind of excited when I saw your report come out, where you embraced as your number. Well, it was maybe it wasn't your number one, but it was the first recommendation was more of a private market solution. And I hear you say it's, you know, we need to phase out Freddie and Fannie, and we can do that with raising the risk premium so that the marketplace can create space in there. You lower the conforming loan limits, create more space in there. So along those lines, with option 2 or 3, you've got to go create something before you start that process. Whereas, well, it says under option 2, the government would also have to develop a backstop mechanism. Number 3, the envisions a system where there's an explicit guarantee of catastrophic risk, and so you've got to go establish some other mechanism in the system, whereas in option number 1, basically you're just creating space for a market that has been there before and many of us think can bring back. So to me that kind of delays moving down that road.
Well, let me clarify that. We believe we have the authority, and the chairman said this at the beginning of the hearing, we have the authority, I mean we being the FHFA and the FHA, have the authority to gradually phase down the role of the government over the next several years while we work with the Congress to figure out which mix of options we want for the future. You don't need to delay that process until you lock in the ultimate design of what's going to replace Fannie and Freddie. Don't need to delay that. You can move ahead. What determines the pace at which you can phase them out are really these basic questions about the gradual process of repair of the housing market and our success in clarifying the rules of the game so that private capital will come in. That's what will determine the pace.
Well, but Mr. Secretary, if you're going to send a very mixed signal to the private sector, then if you say, hey, we're ratcheting down, we're going to create space for the private sector, and by the way, while we're doing that, we're going to set up these new mechanisms. I think the private market says, you know, I think we'll just wait till you get the new system set up, and so I think that is a road that you go down. I think one of the things that the mortgage market needs now, and as I've talked to a number of people all the way through that chain, is they need some certainty, and so I think as you start down that road, you have to make that commitment, and I think one of the things that I would ask you in order to create that certainty is, do we need a definitive date where the switch is turned over? Because at some point in time you have to say at this point in time the taxpayers are not guaranteeing these mortgages.
Well, I understand the risk you're saying, and I think that you said it very thoughtfully, and that's one reason why you can't delay indefinitely legislation that would define the ultimate solution. It's important to recognize if we do nothing, we don't legislate, Congress doesn't legislate, then we're left with authority under the what's called HERA that in many ways would recreate Fannie and Freddie at the end of the process. Slightly different form, many of the risks in that context, and we don't think that would be prudent. So you're right to say that you want to provide as much clarity about the end game as possible, as quickly as possible, but to do that in a sensible way does require legislation. So it's a good reason to try to move. That's why we said in our, that's why I've suggested that this is something Congress wants to do within the next 2 years. You don't want to wait 3 to 5 years to do that.
One of the primary functions that Freddie and Fannie play is the aggregation, being able to bring the mortgages in and then provide securitization. What about the idea of at some point in time just letting them, as part of this wind down, is continue the aggregation function, but at some point in time eliminate the guarantee and let them continue to act as aggregators and you know, sell those securities to the private market?
Well, I think there's something to that, and you can envision that being part of any long-term solution. There's a lot of talent in those institutions, and there's a lot of very valuable systems that make that process work better. There's a lot of economic value in those systems, and so you're right to say that depending on where Congress goes with this, you might want to find a way to preserve what's still very valuable in both the people and those systems.
And one of the ways, in other words, the portfolio that Freddie and Fannie have, they're supposed to be, you know, reducing those. What we understand is that's kind of a tricky situation. They're selling off, they're rolling off some of that, but actually they're bringing loans out of some of the securities and bringing those in and reworking those by repurchasing them. What is there merit into letting Freddie and Fannie sell off some of their portfolio in a non-guaranteed portion? Because what I worry about is they got the interest rate risk. So obviously when they sell those securities, that interest rate risk goes wrong. But if they sell them with a guarantee, then basically the risk is still there. And I'm looking for ways to minimize the taxpayer's exposure here.
Well, I agree with you that you're right, as you said in the beginning, that by gradually winding the roll down, and there's really no alternative to doing it, they are still issuing guarantees, and so there is some risk of exposure to the taxpayer in that process, but we just see no alternative to that. You know, you can't flip a switch today and have the private market come in and take over 90% of the market again. It's just not realistic, as you know. So there's no real option except for them to be still issuing guarantees, but more conservatively underwritten, more expensive over time through this transition process. Now, you're right that their retained portfolio includes a lot of their own guaranteed mortgages. So as they sell those into the market, they're still guaranteed in that context. I just don't see a better way to, I don't see a way to solve that basic problem. We're living with that. That's the price of the mistakes of the past. Our job is to make sure that, again, we wind them down in a way where we reduce the risk of loss to the taxpayer ultimately over time. And I think we're doing a very good job of bringing down those losses, those estimates carefully over time, but we're going to stay at it, and it depends a lot on the quality of the judgments that the FHA makes.
FHFA makes. Thank you. Mr. Ackerman.